Happy New Year's Eve, and it has been a pretty crazy year in Destiny. Yesterday, I wanted to recap my 7 favorite things about Destiny 2 in the year of 2023. In this video, I want to focus on the 7 worst things that I think happened to Destiny 2 and the universe of Destiny as a whole this year. So I'm going to go ahead and have yesterday's video linked down below. Watch that after this one. I'm interested in all of the discussion surrounding both of these topics. For this video, what were your least favorite things this year? And when you go back and watch the other one, what was your favorite things this year? So I just want to start off. The worst thing by far this year were the layoffs, right? A lot of people were impacted. I think it was like 10% of Bungie was laid off. I think this is part of a much larger issue, but it definitely affects Destiny as a whole in terms of ridiculous revenue projections. And even though Destiny was in the top 10 highest earning games on Steam, I think it was a platinum earner. And even though we know that the game has been over monetized to hell, prices are rising, things are being, chopped off the seasonal model and sold for separate. And we have event passes and dungeon passes, and it's just money, and it's still not enough. And people's livelihoods are put at stake because of this. I think it's a huge problem. It's going to have a lot of ramifications in the world as we have fewer people working on the game. In the world of Destiny, I mean, fewer people working on the game. We're definitely going to feel that going forward in the next year or so of content. And I just, I needed to call out. It's not like there's anything we can do about it, unfortunately, but it definitely, in my opinion, is kind of the worst thing that happened this year. I just wanted to make sure to touch on that. Now I'm going to go back. We have one thing that I've been really adamant on that I think is really hurting the game, and they're walking a lot of this back, which is good, but it is going to be the excessive use of skill-based matchmaking and fireteam-based matchmaking in all Crucible modes. Now, there should be places where you can go and play a skill-based matchmaking game, whether that be a ladder style thing like comp. Comp is weird because it's ladder style, so it's based off of how many points you have, and it's skill-based. I think they might have dialed back the skill base, but I believe it's still there. So that kind of sucks. But for most of this year, every single playlist, save 1 or 2, had very heavy skill-based matchmaking. Now they're walking it back, where pretty much the only things that'll be left with skill-based matchmaking are going to be comp and Iron Banner, I believe. Iron Banner, I'm pretty adamant does not need skill-based matchmaking. It should just be chill. And the fire team based matchmaking, I think, worked really well when there was a solo queue node and there was a fire team node, but now that they've rolled it all into one, and this goes for Gambit, Trials, Iron Banner, it's pretty unbearable to play a lot of those game modes in a stacked fire team, unless you just want to be playing a $10,000 grand tournament finale style game. I refuse to play Iron Banner with more than myself. I refuse to trio stack Trials. Duo stack is the only way to do it now. Gambit with 4 people, it turns into you playing the same team over and over again. I don't know if this is because of the skill band that I'm in, or how much time I have in the game, or whatever the hell. But my experience has definitely been made substantially worse due to these changes, and I hope it's something that they keep working on and hopefully continue to get rid of in the future. I do like the core idea of fire team based matchmaking. Like I said, I think when there's a separate solo queue node, it works perfectly, but I'm just not a fan of how it is right now. The State of the Game article dropped the day before GCX. We were all in Orlando. I was actually standing in line for the Guardians of the Galaxy ride at Epcot, and it dropped, and I don't have to reiterate how awful this was, but I'm going to. It was very tone deaf. It was at a time where everyone was pretty fed up with every aspect of the game, and it was just a really, really bad article that didn't really touch on many concerns that we had. I will say a lot of good came out of this, because now, as a direct result of this, Joe Blackburn dropped his Twitter thread. Now he's been, appearing in streams and doing semi-frequent Twitter updates and that sort of stuff. So I think the State of the Game article, in terms of as a community, was probably our low point, and I really hope we keep building from there. I think a low point for Bungie's obviously going to be the layoffs, and hopefully it doesn't get any lower than that. But I just an awful State of the Game article. Nothing like what we had come to expect from like the Luke Smith ones, for instance. And I hope that sort of thing just doesn't happen again. One thing that has been really kind of hitting me and making me, I'm really conflicted on this, because I talked about this in yesterday's video, and once again, please go watch that. It helps the channel a lot. I think like we've had some of the best seasonal content this year in terms of Coil, deep dives, altars of summoning, Embaru engine. Like, I feel like we've had some of the most creative and different seasonal content compared to previous content that we've ever had in the history of Destiny. But on the other side of that is there's half of the seasonal model that's not that, is just, they're not evolving it. It's becoming incredibly stagnant, and it's mostly revolving around like how the narrative is delivered. I think there have been a lot of really interesting stories this year, especially Season of the Witch. I think that was an incredibly cool story, but the way that this is delivered to us week upon week, and waiting and a cutscene here, but then this really important thing that happens in the lore is never explained to us, and it's on like the lore of a ship or something. Man, I thought we were past this with the storytelling of Seraph. I thought we had really hit our stride with how they were telling their stories. And then Lightfall happened, and that story sucked. And then you have like Amanda Holiday dying in Defiance for no reason. What was that? Why? None of that story even mattered. Then we go into Season of the Deep, which that whole like, we got like the best cutscene in the history of Destiny, but why was it delivered there? And why does the rest of the story in the seasonal model, like, what's going on here? Why is it being delivered like this? And then you have like aspects of it like salvage. Why was salvage included in the season at all? It wasn't good. I don't really understand any of the kind of decision making behind that. And I think this season has really been the kind of epitome, and we've really come to a head with this problem with, you know, the Coil being amazing, Warlord's Ruin being amazing, Starcross being pretty cool, having great story, but then our Wiggly story is just like a grand tour of the Dreaming City. So it's like, go do an Ascendant Challenge, go do this 3-year-old mission from Forsaken, do the Blind Well, and it's like, why are we doing this? What is happening? I don't really understand why half of the season's really freaking awesome and the other half is like clearly phoned in. I wish we would get some communication on that, and I wish it would stop. I would honestly rather have zero narrative than whatever this is. So yeah, that's just a huge problem. It's hard to put into words, but just the boring half of seasons that are clearly just retreading old content, we gotta cut that out. I just have Lightfall for the next point. It's been beaten to hell and back, man. So I don't want to talk about this too much, but Lightfall, clearly a miss. Wasn't typically or technically supposed to exist as far as we know in the first place. You have just, I think like really the thing I want to harp on is like the tone, I think was just a miss. I really think this should have been like our Infinity War, where we go into the end of this half of this story and we just lose and we get decimated, and that's kind of what happened, but the tone was completely wrong. They went in with like a 70s synth wavy cop vibe, and I think we just should have just been brutalized, and it should have been way more somber and way less jokey, and we should have had like definitively lost, instead of like, oh, I think the Traveler might be dead, and oh no, this guy you met 3 missions ago died, you know, like. So I just think tonally Lightfall, complete miss, and I don't want to harp on that for too long. I think one thing that has really suffered this year is going to be build crafting. I was talking about this on Twitter a couple weeks ago, where there was never really a time where Warmind sells Wells of Light and Charged with Light were all ever good at the same time, but having those options were really cool. Was really cool. Having those options was really cool. And, you know, that's the only time in Destiny where I have like significantly changed my play style, is like going between those different types of build crafting. Like, oh, Warmind cells require a way different play style and build crafting style and theory crafting mentality than something like Wells of Light. Now they've all just been kind of bastardized and thrown together, and it's really lame and very simple, and everyone runs the same mods, and there's no versatility, and you don't really have to think about anything. Most of the differences in build crafting come from the 3.0s, which is like cool and all, but I would really like to get deeper into the mod side of things, and you know, different ways to approach certain encounters, like we did with like Warmind cells, for instance. So I really hope they expand on specifically like armor mods and get way more creative with those going into the future. It's a hard balance, and this kind of goes into our last point too. We are so power crept right now. Our subclasses are so powerful. Even though everyone runs the same mods, they're quite powerful right now. And so it's like, how do you introduce another aspect of that isn't just completely busted but changes gameplay? Not my job. I'm just, you know, providing insight into like, I really miss when build crafting mattered a lot more in terms of armor mods and that sort of stuff. You got to make armor matter. Everyone and their mom has artifice armor now, so it's not like there's no incentive to go get more, and I wish there was more incentive. So that's this point. And then that goes into like my number one like in-game problem is going to be the state of the loot. And this is kind of tied in with the last point. We are so unbelievably power crept right now, and crafting has made it so easy to get a god roll of whatever weapon in whatever slot. None of the loot in the game seems like it matters anymore. I don't know how they fix this, but it's like, I will never use anything but Forbearance, because Forbearance is literally a god weapon. If I had cheats, I could not think of a weapon that is better than Forbearance. If I could create my own thing. And because of that, no matter what drops in that slot, probably not using it. And this leads to problems where the last two dungeons have dropped, and there's been one interesting weapon that, you know, has meta viability between the two dungeons, where in the last 3 seasons, there's maybe like 3 weapons that are interesting to farm, and then there's 20 weapons that people are getting the red borders for just to have. In the last 2 raids, one interesting legendary weapon, and mostly for PvP. So from a PvE standpoint, I think we've reached the end of the line with weapons, and unless they power creep us even more ridiculously, something drastic has to happen with loot. I'm not saying sunsetting is the answer, but it is definitely a answer. I know people don't want to hear that, but it really sucks when we are getting some of the best seasonal content we've ever had with like I said, Coil and Altars of Sorrow. And you know, I enjoy playing those for the activity because I'm having fun, but the majority of people need that loot chase. It is a looter shooter after all. And so when you have an activity like Coil, which is just raining weapons on you constantly, but no matter what, they won't be interesting to most people, you run into a pretty big problem with player retention. So those are my my 7 biggest issues with Destiny this year. If I miss anything, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm really excited for next year. I do have a lot of hope with Final Shape, and I think it's going to absolutely blow our minds. Might be copium, but we'll see. Yeah, go check out yesterday's video. I'll see you guys in the new year. Make sure to subscribe to help us on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and have a fantastic day.